Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, Mac Voices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I'm really thrilled with today's guest because, well, unfortunately, we tried to connect at NAB when I was in Las Vegas. We couldn't quite make it because of schedules, but I've been looking forward to this interview since before NAB because I'm a huge fan of the product. The product is FiLMiC Pro, a video app for iOS, and we have Neill Barham of FiLMiC Pro here to talk about FiLMiC Pro. Neill, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much, Chuck. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm absolutely thrilled, as I said, because when I had the opportunity to hook up with you all, it's like, yeah, that's one interview I really want to do. I love doing interviews with people that produce the gear that I use and the software that I use, and FiLMiC Pro is my go-to app when I'm going to trade shows like CES or NAB.
Great way to get around the floor, travel light, use the device that you already have on you.
Exactly. And FiLMiC Pro gives me so much more power than the onboard camera app. And that's one of the things that I wanted to get you here. Tell folks a little bit about FiLMiC Pro, its history, and the feature set, and then we'll talk about maybe where we're going from here.
Sure, that sounds great. The initial concept for FiLMiC Pro came about in 2010 with the advent of the iPhone 4, which I guess Mac aficionados will remember was the first iPhone to shoot 720p high definition. Didn't have image stabilization at the time, so there was still some rolling shutter issues if you were walking around handheld. But if you used a tripod or you were stable, leaned up against a wall or a door jamb, you would be able to get beautiful 720p footage. So the initial concept was like, wow, that's pretty spectacular. That would be so good. I bet you could slip in a shot as a B-roll into a larger production and nobody would notice. And so the initial concept was sort of a B-roll cam where a crew member could be coming home from set, see the perfect either establishing shot or cutaway insert shot, pull over to the side of the road, get the shot, FTP it to the editor, it goes into the rough cut, and nobody's the wiser. But, a week or two of noodling on that concept, it was sort of like, if it's going to be that good that it can go unnoticed in a professional production, then it's going to be an incredible tool for everybody from artists to videographers, enthusiasts, and professionals. And a phrase that we often use is like, what's the ceiling now is quickly to become the floor. And so the idea, as good as the iPhone 4 was, in a couple of years, it was going to be sort of like the runt of the litter, and there would be new hardware that would be vastly superior. And we've seen that with every successive iPhone generation that's come out. And so as the iPhones have gotten better, FiLMiC Pro's gotten better each and every year.
I'm going to steal that line. I love that the ceiling becomes the floor. That's a great line. I'm going to use that tomorrow. But yeah, and that's been the thing. I've watched FiLMiC Pro, evolve and add capabilities. To be candid, some capabilities that I just don't have the skill set to use, but also and that's the great thing. It's kind of been across the whole spectrum. So if I'm basically a low-level user or a medium-level user, I'm still seeing improvements, not just the thing for the guys that are – we see plenty of people out there that are saying, hey, I shot a whole movie on my iPhone or my iPad. And, yeah, those features are there for them, but I still get some features.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The idea for the app is that you can basically just take it out of the box, start using it, and it's going to shoot spectacular high definition, give you full control over focus and exposure. And then for the granularity control that the professionals will want to use, they can drill down in any which way, whether it's frame rates, whether it's aspect ratios, whether it's resolutions, whether it's their audio sampling rates. And that works great for professionals who know what they're doing. The only area where we seem to get in trouble is kind of with the newbies who hear about it from the name and the reputation and then start drilling down into the settings. And, I wonder what this does. I wonder what this does. And I wonder what this does. And by the time you turn on 30 things that you don't know quite what they do, you can get yourself into a little of a sticky wicket. But, we have a great support queue where we respond to all incoming requests within 24 hours. So if anybody gets themselves, hamstrung, we'll get them right back on the straight and narrow.
Come on, Neill. Nobody ever turns on all 30 things. We don't do that.
One or two of them have.
You've probably got the support queue to prove it, too.
Yeah, well, that's actually been one of the pleasures of a company that's matured and grown over the years from what started out as just a couple of people and now is, a company of almost 20 people, that we have the additional resources that we can support the community that uses the app all over the world. So that's been a pleasure. I have some distant memories, borderline, nightmares of when it was just me, groggily dragging myself out of the bed to, tackle 30, 40, 50 tickets a day. But thankfully, I don't do much of that anymore.
So one big thing that happened along the way for you is the iPhone and iPad became 4K capable. And I think that I don't know exactly when I can't remember what I first shot with FiLMiC Pro, but I know that was one of the most exciting things is when it went 4K capable. Now I have all these new settings, just what you were saying, that I've got all these aspect ratios. I can decide exactly what I want to shoot in and why, and go from there. So you still give me access to everything. You just give me a lot more controls than I have with the native camera app.
Sure, and I think it works out fantastically for run-and-gun shooters or one-person operations, because now you have a 4-frame or 4K image that you can punch in for close-ups and still have a 1080p high-definition image without losing a lot of quality. We often have debates internally about the digital zoom functionality because, you push into 4x, 6x, you're really going to degrade your image and pixelate it. And so, I think in certain iterations of the app, we've actually prohibited people from going past 1080 as a punch in on the zoom. Now, if you want to do it, you can do it. But a 4K image gives you tons of flexibility in the edit room, whether you want to do pan and scans to introduce some movement if you don't have a second shooter or if you're on a tripod. So it's been great. And I think it was also a key signifier to just the market as a whole that mobile content creation, whether it's filmmaking or whether it's broadcast journalism, was a real credible thing. It's a little bit easier to say it now because with the gift of hindsight, but when FiLMiC Pro first came out in early 2011, a lot of people thought it was pretty much a gimmick and, give me a break, nobody will ever shoot anything on an iPhone. Why would I ever do that? And one of the most interesting developments that's happened in the last year or two really is that people who can shoot on any camera that they want, Steven Soderbergh will be sort of like the example of the moment, choose to shoot on iPhone sometimes, not just because it has a good enough image, but because it actually opens up avenues of creativity that larger cameras don't. So it's not just the situation where you're trying to be an acceptable, compromise for a more expensive solution. It actually, I find it more enjoyable, and I think a lot of other filmmakers find it either that or opens up possibilities that never existed before.
Well, you can take an iPhone, or an iPad for that matter. A lot of places you can't take a regular video camera that you're going to be able to shoot things. You're going to be allowed to shoot things that, you can't have the guy walking around with the rig on his shoulder. And so you're right. It may not give you all the options, but if you're shooting in 4K and taking advantage of some of FiLMiC Pro's capabilities, you can take it back and do a lot of things in post.
Yep. Documentary filmmakers have mentioned that a lot. We've been in contact with a woman who filmed a documentary on elephant poaching in sub-Saharan Africa, and she started on traditional ENG cameras and then migrated increasingly more to FiLMiC Pro, first as sort of like a complementary device, but then almost more as the primary device because she generated zero attention whatsoever when she wandered around filming stuff with her iPhone. Everybody thought that she was a tourist like everybody else, whereas before when she had the ENG camera, everybody sort of, got their hackles up and what are you doing? What's the pitch of your story? So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. For a lot of people, it lets them go places and document stories that they never would have been able to before.
Now, there's one little feature that I love, and I don't understand why Apple didn't include it, because it's been critical for me as a solo shooter, and that is the audio meters. That I can bring up a set of audio meters and know that my mic is working and I'm seeing the levels that I'm capturing, because we all know that, video is one thing, but you got to have great audio no matter what. And, I actually had a situation a couple years ago where I was at NAB and I lost some interviews because I was not using FiLMiC at that time, and my audio stopped, my mic stopped working. For whatever reason, it didn't work. And so I've got some really great silent footage of some interviews I really wanted. And so just that little inclusion, that gives me, again, the access to control the information I need. And that sounds silly to be talking about a feature like that when there's so many other great features of FiLMiC Pro, but yeah, it makes a difference.
Well, essential for people who are doing something for professional purposes, absolutely. And I don't think that anybody would necessarily fault Apple for playing to the largest consumer market. They certainly do things to try to ensure that people get manageable or usable audio. They have sort of a limiter that's going to bring down the highs and bring up the lows a bit. But you're absolutely right. If there's something going wrong and you're not getting any audio signal, you're not going to get that information. And I think for most consumer use cases, it isn't mission critical, but for certainly somebody who's using it for broadcast, a film, what have you, then it absolutely is. And then an interesting, I guess, little technical anecdote for FiLMiC Pro, like the full range of things that we offer, we actually let people disable that limiter on the highs and lows for the audio signal if they like, so that if they're using external professional audio equipment or they have a microphone that has a level adjust on that, then they know that they're getting exactly what that line level input is saying, no more or no less. So for a lot of people, they'll use FiLMiC Pro for years and never have to take advantage of that particular feature. But for the right people who are making a feature film and they want something to be exceedingly loud because it's supposed to be exceedingly loud, then they're going to be able to honor that on the audio input side.
So talk about some of the features that I can't talk about because they don't apply to me. I have no idea what they mean or how to use them, but I know there's some definitely high-end filmmaking features built into FiLMiC Pro that I would like to have, like, for folks to understand that are there if they're the ones that have the need.
Sure. So the first one, and you might actually take advantage of this, is the higher bit rates. So again, maybe not germane to the consumer application, but for filmmakers who are hoping to see their work up on the big screen or are intending to color grade it, we let you shoot at twice the data rate of the native camera app. As a default, we shoot at 33% higher of a data rate than the native camera app, but we have a setting called FiLMiC Extreme, which will let you record at 100 megabits a second at 4K. And so for seeing an iPhone image up on a 40-foot theatrical screen, that's absolutely crucial to getting more data into the camera and preserving more data at every step along the workflow. We have absolute full granular control over frame rates from 1 to 240 frames a second. And I guess our philosophy is, if we can do something that enables one storyteller somewhere to create the expression that they want, then it's valuable for us. So what this would potentially mean, and I'm trying to think of a good example, but I don't know, just imagine somebody's juggling 5 different objects at a time, and you want to go to your timeline at 24 frames a second. So you could dial in 150 frames a second capture over 24 playback. You could test out a clip, and you could be like, it isn't quite right. I need it to be just a little bit slower. So then you can bring your capture up to 170 frames a second. You'd be like, actually, that's too fast. It's not quite what I want. Bring it down to 160, bring it up to 162 until you hit that just magic aha moment. And like, okay, that's the perfect aesthetic that I want in the shot. And because you're able to dial in exactly the fast or slow motion effect to the absolute frame per second, it lets people do extraordinary stuff. One of the biggest things that we did in the latest major update to the app, which was version 6, was introducing some gamma curves, and specifically log and flat color spaces for users who are intending to color grade their footage. So again, not a consumer application, because you take a quick look at any flat or log footage and it looks washed out, and what the hell's wrong with that? But for people who are going to take it into DaVinci Resolve or whatever their favorite color grading format is, they suddenly have more latitude to play with and can do extraordinary things. So those are just a few examples. One other that actually I think begins to cross over and lets people take the next step towards expressive control over their smartphone videography is the ability to pull focus. So you can set a couple of focus marks and then actuate some focus pulls between those. So if you're doing a 2-shot, you can control where the point of interest is in the image, which is really how you get into professional filmmaking or storytelling. Like, you're guiding the audience's view around the frame of your image. And so we enable people to do that on, again, the device that they have in their pocket for basically like the cost of lunch, whereas traditionally they would be using that on a grease pen, on a cinema lens, on an infinitely more expensive camera. But this lets, kids in middle school and high school, college, practice the same techniques that are being used on TV sets or Hollywood productions. I think that's great.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's enabling in so many ways. It's the thing we say so often about so much tech that, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, these things would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in a small studio. And now you're potentially walking around with one in your hip pocket. Then all you have to do is, fire up FiLMiC Studio and you start to play with some of this stuff. And I've enjoyed learning more about videography over the past few years, and FiLMiC Pro has been a big part of it because it gives me access to equipment that under any other circumstances I could not possibly afford.
Yep. Yeah, and it enables people to tell stories that otherwise would have been turned down and never seen the light of day. And that's why everybody at the company takes such a profound appreciation that Sean Baker's Tangerine was sort of the signature independent film that helped put FiLMiC Pro on the map for theatrical production, because it's a edgy, provocative, potentially controversial story that probably wouldn't have gotten greenlit by any studio, yet it's a beautiful, moving piece of art that lets people the world over get a window into the lives of people that they otherwise might have either walked past or marginalized, and get a shared sense of empathy. And I mean, what is more moving or profound about art than that? And so the fact that we were able to play a part in that and then subsequently use that as a beautiful example of what we're trying to do, there hardly a day goes by we don't appreciate how that played out.
I also want to go back to some of the settings you were talking about, because one thing that you have to be a little bit careful of, and you don't want to just turn on those 30 settings that Neill was talking about, because if you do, you can end up filling up your iPhone or iPad storage really fast. You don't just want to shoot everything in 4K FiLMiC Extreme because you're going to have very limited space. So, I know I always tend to buy the highest storage capacity because that's what I'm going to do with the device, but not everybody does that. And again, but I love that because, okay, if I feel like I'm going to only shoot for the web, I'm not going to do any real serious post, I can set it at 1080p and, have access to all these phenomenal controls and shoot something very cool. Or if I have the storage and I have the need and desire, I can crank it up to 4K and do it that way. But it's that versatility that I think is so powerful with FiLMiC, and why anybody that's interested in videography should try it out.
Yep, absolutely. And for that very reason, that's why we still have the app default to 1080p when you take it out of the box, because 90% or more of what people shoot is probably going straight to the web. And 1080, unless you're going to start doing some pan and scan movements or some punch-ins, is more than adequate for web applications. And it was much more, I think, of a meaningful distinction back when Apple was still selling 16 gig cameras, because 4K 100 megabits a second, you'd be about 10, 15 minutes into an interview, and then with your other photos, music, and applications, you'd be pretty much out of storage. I think they're up to 64. I hope they're not still selling 32. Maybe they are on the SE, but they've certainly gotten a lot more storage, and we always tell people it's negligible extra cost to go for the 256 gig model. And with those, you actually do have to work quite a bit to try to fill those up. So that's actually a great example of how the hardware has matured right alongside FiLMiC Pro to make it a better experience for everybody.
Yeah. So, Neill, where do you go from here? I mean, obviously, I know developers like you. They always have more things they're going to put in. Can you give us any idea of what might be coming down the line, or is that too proprietary at the moment?
There's definitely some stuff that I can talk about. I'm eager to talk about. We have some interesting stuff with some partner relationships that I can't talk about, but I guess I could point to a few examples to sort of give people an idea of what might be coming from those partner relations. So actually, the latest version of the app offered full integration for DJI's new Osmo Mobile 2. We were the launch partner for the Osmo Mobile 1. At $129, that's an absurdly low price point to get a motorized gimbal, and then to be able to control focus and exposure from the grip itself and without having to reach for the screen. That was fantastic. And then on the audio side, we did a great partnership with Sennheiser on their Ambio headset, which lets people record audio in 360 degrees and gives you that sort of spatial sensation that you get when you're sitting in a movie theater and you hear the footsteps behind you, and your tendency is to want to look over your shoulder and, see who's about to come and get you in the horror film. But on the company side, I think you're going to see a lot of stuff in image manipulation. So we did the gamma curves last time, and over the next year, you're going to see things that let people take advantage of the log or flat footage that they shoot within the app and both grade it and apply some signature looks to it so that you get a sense of your finished product within the app. And we'll also let people do that on the live side of things. And similar to the way that we handle aspect ratios, where you can either crop to disk, so I want to shoot in Super 35 and get a widescreen look, I can either record to disk that way, or I can get some guidelines which are going to show me what my framing is but I still record the full 16:9 image, and then I let my editor do the actual framing in post. So if the director decides, I want to give this character a little bit more headroom, they're able to make that adjustment. So all of our looks are, well, actually, I shouldn't say all of them, but most of the looks and all of the LUTs you'll be able to take a look at live and either record to disc that way or just preview them and then apply the LUT later. So if you decide for some reason that you want to change the look, you can do that. The other thing that we're exploring is potentially stratifying our lineup of video cameras, because right now, FiLMiC Pro is the solution for a ton of people, whether it's educators, whether it's journalists, whether it's filmmakers, whether it's artists, whether it's consumers. And there's a ton of stuff in FiLMiC Pro that appeals to filmmakers that has no application for journalists and minimal to no applications for consumers. So we're exploring the idea of a consumer iteration of a FiLMiC app, a dedicated app for journalists, because that has been the one area that news organizations all over the world are starting to use FiLMiC Pro, not just for their traditional camera operators, but for everybody on their staff. And in the training of that, there's a lot of stuff you got to gloss over. The journalist isn't going to be deciding between 150 and 170 frames per second over 24 as a playback. They need 25 or 30 frames a second, or possibly 50 or 60, and that's about it. So that and some unique functionality for newsrooms and administrators we think would be a compelling product as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And that sort of brings us to the thing that we haven't talked about, and that's the price. It's a shocking price, Neill, and I'll just let you tell people.
Well, okay, so it's $15 right now, $20 if you buy the camera kit, which is FiLMiC Pro bundled with the remote app, which is standalone $12, so you'll save $7 if you buy that as the bundle. The remote app lets you control your iPhone from your iPad. That's the most common sort of configuration, and pretty much all of it. You can control focus exposure. You can do focus pulls. You can change your settings. You can look at all of your live analytics. You can look at waveform. You can look at 3 different histograms. You can look at vector scope. You can have a 4-up view, so your DP is monitoring all of the scopes and a live preview while the scene is unfolding for $20. And, at least the scope side of the remote app is somewhat similar to the great products that Atomos puts out on their Ninja and Shogun line. And, that's going to start at $1,000 and work upward. Well, there's some things that those products do that the iPad remote doesn't do as an external storage option, but still it's a pretty decent facsimile of what's an indispensable product for professional sets with your second iOS device that you have lying around. And interestingly, I guess while we're on price, over the years, FiLMiC Pro has trended upward price-wise. We actually released in 2011 at the shockingly low price of $299, trying to appeal to both the professional and the straight consumer crowd at the same time. And then over time, we realized that we're definitely more of a professional application, and Super 8 or 8mm vintage camera were much more the sort of fun $1.99 tools. But the price increases have let us pour more money back into development, and we spend every dollar that we earn. And the benefit of that is that we've been able to stay completely independent and autonomous, and so we get to make all of the decisions, and just about every decision that we make is in the best interest of the artist. I'm just going to use one brief example of that, and that is the Moondog Labs 35 or Moondog Labs anamorphic adapter, which lets people shoot on a 2:4:0:1 aspect ratio, but de-squeeze the image, take advantage of the full sensor, and then the software re-squeezes the image and gives you the final 2:4:0:1 output. No venture capitalist in the universe would look at the potential number of users for a $160 anamorphic accessory for iPhones and would say that that's a good use of development resources, especially when the company requesting that we build the integration layer for it, was just requesting, but certainly not offering us any resources to do it. But we wanted to do it because we knew that somebody would take advantage of it and think it's an interesting artistic avenue. Well, the person who took advantage of it was Sean Baker, and the film was Tangerine. And so what was a pie-in-the-sky notion ended up being one of the great examples of FiLMiC Pro in the creative ecosystem. And we want that autonomy going forward. We listen to our users every day, and they tell us what the app needs to be better, and we try by any means necessary to develop for them.
In case anybody missed it, I was being a bit smart about the $20 price, because I look at this and I think, I don't even know what the right price is, but $20 is crazy for what this thing can do. I mean, it blows me away every time. And then I look at the price and it's like, okay, I don't understand why. I mean, I absolutely respect and I know where you're coming from when it comes to journalists and all. But gee, if you're going to do this, go ahead and get the $20 version and all the capabilities. And I mean, I'm working my way up. It's slow, and I'm sure there are things that I will never use, but I have the opportunity to learn and use them if I want to take the time. And for $20, I mean, the result is phenomenal.
And I would also like to add that for $20, people not only get 24-hour response in our support queue, but we also have arguably as much, if not more, tutorial resources than anybody in our space. You can go find over 20 tutorials on FiLMiC Pro /tutorials. FiLMicPro.com /tutorials. But so if there's one particular function that you have always wondered about whether you want to use it or not, you can watch a 3 to 5 minute tutorial, learn all about it, and then go try it out for an afternoon. And we think that's great, and we will continue to do that with every new feature that gets added to the app.
And Neill, that's a place where I don't understand why more developers don't do that. And of course, you're in the video business, so it makes even more sense for you. But so many of these apps have so many features that are not necessarily difficult once you know how to do it, but you have to learn how to do it. And by the very nature of iOS interfaces, they're very minimalist. And so if you don't know where to punch or touch or pull or whatever, or tap, then it can be a challenge, and you're probably not getting the most out of the app. So, in fact, I wanted to get to that point that, this is a great way to learn FiLMiC Pro, is go and look at some of this stuff. And that's where you're going to realize that some of these features you may not even know about, but they may be for you or may improve your project.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's at least like one or two tenets of app development that we potentially violate pretty blatantly. And one would be that every piece of functionality is just intuitively obvious and you can find it without any education. There's just so much stuff going on in the app, and there's no way to make it all obviously gesturally based. So we're pretty much 180 degrees from that. And I think that we found an audience that shows, I'm okay with it not just being 3 simple swipe gestures and that's the sum total of the app. And I'm willing to invest a little in my education for the long-term benefit and functionality that the app is going to give me. And yeah, so I guess complexity on one side and then the education to unlock that complexity on the other side. But this is potentially a lifetime investment. On the subject of price, a lot of people are moving to subscriptions. A lot of people in our space are moving into subscriptions that average about $5 a month. So that's $60 a year. Add that up over a decade. That's a considerable chunk of change. I guess I'd be lying if I said that we weren't considering whether we'll have to pivot to that at some point. But anybody who gets in now is going to be grandfathered in at the exceptionally low price of $20, and then they'll be off the subscription, at least for all of the functionality that they buy at that price point. So I think it's a great deal. And you can actually see both Google and Apple trying to make some concessions to developers. If you're going to continue to develop this product year after year after year after year, there has to be a better monetization model than, give us $2 or $3 once and then keep developing it for 20 or 30 years. But for now, we're a single sticker price.
Well, I think we're in a period of evolution, that there was a time that apps had a lifespan and they kind of came and went. And of course, the App Store doesn't allow for upgrade pricing. So that presents some challenges, because if I bought App A 6 years ago and they released lots of new features, previously I would have kind of been expecting to get those features. And the only option they can really give me is, well, you got to buy a new version of the app. That rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but unfortunately, that's the way it is. And the developers have to get paid, or otherwise they're not going to continue to develop this cool stuff. So I don't. I'm not. Well, as far as subscriptions, I'm torn. There's some apps I think are absolutely appropriate. Other apps, not quite so sure. But FiLMiC is one, and especially with your history of development, that if you decided to go that way, I wouldn't blame you. It would make a lot of sense, because you're continuing to add those features. Or, as you said, trend the price up.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure what the right solution is. I don't think that there's sort of like the Cinderella slipper of the moment, because I'm reluctant to spend $5 or $10 a month on an app subscription, and I'm a developer. You don't know who's going to continue developing their app 2-3 years from now and who isn't. And so I think part of the reason we have not had much blowback on raising our prices, that people have seen that we are just tirelessly updating this app and rolling out new features year after year. And so they're like, I get it, you guys aren't going anywhere. What I would like to see, and I don't know the magic solution for it, but maybe one of your viewers has the right idea and can, pass it on to Apple or Google some way, but would be like an app bundle subscription from different developers, sort of like the cable TV model. But if I knew that I could get FiLMiC Pro, FiLMiC Remote, LumaFusion, ProShot, Shot Designer, Sunseeker, pick a handful of other apps in the photo video space that are going to help me year in and year out, and they're from credible developers that are continuing to iterate on their product, that's worth something. 10 apps for $20 a month, and I get to choose what those apps are. That would be fantastic. But of course, everybody in that group has different price points. How do you share the revenue? I don't have a good answer for that. That's, again, maybe crowdsourcing. Somebody will have a magic solution. Will all of those apps be still current 3 years from now? Don't know the answer to that either. But if it were just a grab bag of 10, if somebody doesn't continue to develop their app, you kick it out of the bundle and you get to pick another one. I think that would keep developers honest and know that they're not just going to continue to bank checks without continuing to invest in their product.
Yeah. Well, do me a favor. Stop talking to me and go get to work on the next version, because I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the one other thing I wanted to mention is that pre-production side of it, that we have a lot of plans on the drawing board for a pre-visualization product, and might be taking advantage of some new and emerging technologies. I'll let people read into that however they want to.
Okay, I'm so tempted to throw a bunch of buzzwords at you, and I'm not going to. I promise. I'm not going to try to pull it out of you. Neill, thank you so much for the time. It's a great look behind the scenes at an app I truly love and use on a consistent basis. Obviously, it's in the App Store. Where should we send folks for the tutorials and all the information we talked about?
FiLMicPro.com pretty much has everything that you need to decide if FiLMiC Pro or FiLMiC Remote are the right products for you. It'll also tell you a little bit about the Cinematographer Kit, which is our lone in-app purchase and governs the gamma curves, which we figure flat and logarithmic shooting aren't for most people. And this will prevent a lot of people from getting into trouble and being like, why does my footage look washed out? So you can find out everything there, and then we would encourage people to follow us on all the usual social media channels where you will find either new emerging developments that are coming in updates, probably quicker than you will on the website. And you'll also learn about other interesting stuff, which I should give your listeners a plug. Right now we're running the third FiLMiC Pro short film contest. One World is the theme this year, and we have 20 some odd great sponsors. I'm not sure I'll be able to list them all, but fantastic people. Sennheiser, Shure, DJI, Iographer, Beast Grip, Moment, Helium Core, Zachary, LumaFusion. God, I'm only halfway. I should have written this down. But go to our website and you'll learn all about the contest, and you can win up to $25,000 in prizes for making a short film with the app and showing us your vision and your creativity. And for us, it's a great way to see what our users are up to and get stories from all over the world. And, that's why we do this.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad we got to plug that because, that's something that you never know, folks. You could be the one, and if nothing else, you're going to get a great education through the process of entering the contest. So, fantastic. Neill, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. I love it, and thank you for what you've done for us so far, and looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Chuck, I enjoyed it immensely as well, and I look forward to talking to you next year and letting you know what we're up to then. And
next year we will connect in person at NAB.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much.
Okay, take care.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. I really mean it. $20 for FiLMiC Pro and the power it delivers is a phenomenal bargain. Even if you're just a routine shooter who is going to take advantage of only a few features, it will improve the quality of your project immensely. Please go check it out. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.